Hey everyone, Somber here. I just thought since we've got the go ahead to do some content about Dominion 6, the people in the beta team, that I would just go through some of the new features that have been added to modding in Dominion 6. I'm not allowed to show you in-game footage at the moment. That's stuff that I think Das Tactic, Lucid, and Battle Mode are allowed to stream. I'm really just going to be showing you things from the mod manual. But there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to cover, and that I think would be kind of interesting, particularly to modders or to people who enjoy using mods, because they'll be able to see what modders are able to do with it. So, just going to go through the mod manual, and this is, I'm not expecting lots of people to tune into this stream, but hopefully it'll make a useful video for people afterwards. So the first thing is we've been given a bunch of new ID ranges. We've been given a lot more IDs to work with than we had before. If I go down to the bottom of the mod manual here, we've got the modding number limits. So you can see we've got a lot more weapon slots than we had before, more armor slots, way more monster slots, and so on. And then a lot of the things which were hard caps in the game, like the number of mages that you're allowed, the number of special abilities that a monster can have, a lot of things which were kind of frustrating limits to modders before, those have been extended. They're not removed, there are still limits, but the limits are considerably extended. So basically, you're not going to have people running into when they've got very big mods like Dominion's Enhanced. I know was running into some of these limits. Hellenica, made by Ether Nomad, and I think I was on the edge of running into some of these limits with the Warhammer mod. All those things have been extended, which is really useful. Um, so yeah, that's good, and we've been given some more space for descriptions as well. I think description length has been extended, and something that I'm really happy about because it does actually make a big difference for Warhammer is we've been given a bunch of extra pop type slots. The reason I'm interested in having more pop type slots is because that's how I am doing the Warhammer pop type mod, which allows the Warhammer nations to, when they take over a province, put in their own specific population type into that province to allow you to have national province defense in every province and national recruitables in every province and not use the indie system that Dominion's vanilla nations use. So that's the first thing I wanted to cover was just we got more IDs, which is always nice. Now we're going to look at some of this new stuff that's available in monster modding. So the first thing is, I think if I just search for PNG, you will be able to see that you can now use PNG images. So previously you could only use Targa Vision (TGA) images for monsters, but you can now use PNGs. I've got an example mod which will be up on the workshop for the launch of Dominion, so you'll be able to use it straight away, called Waka for the late age. And Waka uses mostly PNG file format. PNG file format's nice because it's basically you've got the same thing as TGA. You've got lossless compression, which is to say it's not like a JPEG. There's no drop in quality of the file. It's just smaller, so it takes up less space, and people find PNGs easier to use. There's more programs that are kind of useful for kind of viewing PNGs and stuff. It's a nicer format than using TGAs. There was PNG support for maps during the beta, but there was some issue with that, so it may come back. You may be able to do map images with PNGs in the future, but at the moment those are, I believe you still have to use TGA files for those. So you can now use PNGs for monsters, which is really nice. Something that was very important to Ether Nomad is this command here, polyimmune, which is to say that a monster cannot be polymorphed and it cannot transform itself using any rituals either. So it can't be turned into a frog by the turn into a frog or curse a frog. I can't remember what the spell's called, but you can't do that. It can't be turned into a different shape by a ritual like transformation or twiceborn. So you can set that to certain monsters, which that's quite important for modders. Opening up a bunch of things which otherwise they'd have to kind of be worried about people being able to turn it into a different form, might break something in their mod. You can now make sure that that's not the case. And that's actually true of all of the default pretenders and things. So while it was very funny in Dominions 5 when you would be able to turn someone's pretender into a frog, or people did some really clever strategies where they turned like a big immobile monolith or whatever, they would turn that into like a lich using twiceborn, or they transform it into something. They can't do any of that anymore because all pretenders I believe have this tag polyimmune. And then there's a bunch of transformation things that are particularly in event modding, which I'll come to later about forcing things to transform. And at the request of Ether Nomad, this was a really good request. There is an ability through an event to force a transformation onto a thing, even if it is polyimmune, even if it can't normally be transformed. So that's a really useful thing for modders. On the subject of changing into different stuff, this is a really neat command. Battle shape. So previously in mods, if you wanted one of your monsters to take on, your troops or commanders, to take on a different shape when in battle, which opens up quite a lot of stuff that you can do in modding, what you would do is you would give it the shrink HP command, and then you'd put shrink HP 999. So as long as this thing has less than 999 hit points, it turns into the next ID. It turns into the next ID sequentially of monster, and then you would use that to make it so that it turned into that form, and then the end of the battle, that form turned back. So you could effectively have something where its shape changes every time it's a battle. This was a little bit hacky in the sense that when the battle started, it took a few ticks for the thing to change shape, which could be kind of weird, particularly if its appearance changed. It could look quite strange. Now we've got battle shape. There's no delay in that happening. At the start of the battle, it will be in the battle shape, and if you want it to change back, you give it a world shape. So you've got one thing so that the monster, whenever it gets into a battle, is in a particular shape, and then if you want to change it back, and of course you don't have to use world shape. You could have it so that the first time it enters into a battle, it changes into a different shape, and you can do this multiple times. The more battles it gets into, it goes subsequently through various different shapes. It's also nice to note that these commands are using name and ID. They're not saying it will turn into the next concurrent ID, which was kind of one of the more annoying things that used to happen. So yeah, battle shape and world shape. You've also got lich. This is very cool. Or lich, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that word. The monster will get this shape if it is transformed into a lich. So you can use this particular command, and I'm pretty sure this wasn't in Dominions 5. You can use this to say if you use Twiceborn, or if you use the new version of the lichdom spell, because previously the lichdom spell would actually summon a lich, which is like a death 4 kind of humanoid. Now it will turn your monster into a lich, and you can, for your modded monsters, you can now say what that form would actually be. So you can put in a thing where you've got, like, maybe you have a custom spell, like if you wanted to have something for the vampire counts, you could have a spell that copies the lichdom spell, and it's like blood kiss, transforms this thing into a lich, and then you would say the thing that you're transforming, so the like prince or whatever that you want to transform into a vampire, you would then give them a lich shape of a suitable vampire. So you can kind of make spells to do things like that to transform them across. So there's a bunch of nice stuff that you can do with those lich shapes, and there's a bunch of those in the default game, different shapes that people will turn into when they're turned into a lich. So next up, we've got the command that I was harassing Ilwinter to try and get, which is to do with XP shapes. So we've got more stuff on the subject of changing shapes here. So this was the original command that we had, XP shape, and I think we maybe also had lab XP shape. I can't remember if that was in Dominions 5 or not, but I'll talk about these. So XP shape is basically just if you get a certain amount of experience, the monster will promote. It's usually used on troops, but I used it quite extensively in the Chaos factions on commanders as well, and I also used it on the Orcs and Goblins, because you can use it to represent a faction that really values people who've done a lot of stuff in battle or gained a lot of experience, going on to becoming more powerful. So these were nice, but there was a lot of problems with the XP shape value. So one of the things is that they can only point to the next monster type, the next monster number, the next ID, right? The concurrent one. So that was kind of irritating. And that has been... Sorry, I've got a rabbit bothering me in the background there. You naughty bunny. So XP shape, we've now got this new command, XP shape mon, which can point to a specific monster number. So that's convenient, but not a huge deal, you might think, over XP shape. You've got a bit more ability to have things not sit next to each other in ID. They can be a different ID that you're just pointing to, or a different monster name. But one of the really cool things about XP shape mon is that this command will accept a mon tag. So mon tags are collections of monsters. So you can have something, when it gains enough experience, transform, be promoted into one of a set of monsters at random, and you can control the weightings of those, of course, within mon tags. So I'm using this in the Warhammer mod for the Chaos factions as a simpler way, because previously I had to jump through a few irritating hoops and it caused a few kind of hacky problems in the mod, to make like a Chaos Warrior turn into either a Chaos Spawn or like a chosen warrior of their god, or a Forsaken Warrior or something like that. So you can do quite a lot of cool stuff just from the fact that they can turn into one of a random, a random one of a set with different weightings on those different monsters. So that's really cool. And that's not something that you could do at all. Previously with this command, you had to jump through a bunch of hoops. This is the one that I was really going on about, and that I really wanted them to add, is XP shape loss. So the reason that this is important is if you think about a troop getting promoted. So I'll just explain what it does first. So XP shape loss, the monster loses from 0 to 100% of its experience when it changes shape due to XP shape or XP lab shape. Or XP shape mon, that should also say there, so that's not quite. I'll point out that typo, but it also works for XP shape mon. Or yes, it does, yeah. So you need to use XP shape mon with that. You can do at least. So the reason that that's important is previously, if you had, let's say, your Chaos Marauder, your kind of barbarian guy, and you want him to be able to turn into a Chaos Warrior, right? If he gets enough experience, the gods notice him, and they're like, we're going to give you this Chaos Armor, we're going to give you this cool sword, you're going to get this recognition of your new status. You are now a Chaos Warrior. That's really cool. The thing that always annoyed me is that you couldn't get rid of that experience. So if your Chaos Marauder has already got 2 stars of experience, or whatever it is that you've said is required for them to become a Chaos Warrior, they've already gained the stats and things from that. And if they then get promoted and transformed into the Chaos Warrior, they are a Chaos Warrior, but they also have the addition of all that experience they've already got, which is unlike all of the other Chaos Warriors that you've already recruited. And it's really weird. Why is this freshly promoted guy, who should be one of the least experienced Chaos Warriors because he's only just made it, why has he got more experience and better stats than all the other Chaos Warriors? So I always found that really irritating. It's also a problem in the sense that if you want something that goes through a chain of experience promotions, then each time it gets promoted, you have to say, or you have to take account of the fact that it already had a bunch of experience as you're going along. So it caused a lot of problems, and I had to do this kind of hacky workaround, which really didn't work very well and caused a bunch of issues, to get rid of that experience. It was a whole rigmarole. But now, I can just put in XP shape loss, and I can say it loses all of its experience, or loses half its experience when it gets promoted, and it opens this up to do a lot of new and different stuff, it's just a lot neater and a lot nicer. So I was really happy to get that. Take a little sip of my drink. So what else have we got on monsters? I said I'd mentioned Lab XP shape. I think this was in Dominions 5, but you can have something where they only get their promotion through experience when they get back to a lab. I think actually Legra or something like that in Dominions 5 used this ability. So there are some other things I'm sure that I'm kind of forgetting, because there's been a bunch of stuff added in the beta, and I haven't kept an exhaustive list of all of the new mod commands that have been added, so there's going to be some things I forget. And I think there are some other things for monster modding, but I think the thing I'll move on to next is just looking at the new mounted system. So if I go over to Mounts and Riders. So in Dominion 6, there's a completely new mounted system. If you have any cavalrymen, this is just in case you don't know, I think a lot of people have been following and do know this. In Dominions 5, if you had a cavalryman, right, he would have a particular tag that says he is mounted. He would get some extra defense, he would not be so encumbered by his armor, and then he would have like higher movement and stuff representing the horse. But the horse itself, that's the extent to which it would be represented. It would just be like, it's there. If you kill the rider, the horse disappears. In Dominion 6, the horse and the rider are two monsters. They're not separate because one is riding the other, but they are effectively two separate monsters on the field. They have different stats, they have hit points and things. You can kill the rider from on top of the horse, you can kill the horse from under the rider. In either case, the other one will persist. The horse will just run away usually. The rider might carry on fighting, he might take some fall damage from falling off the horse after it got killed and so on. It's more dynamic, it looks cool in battle, it's an interesting system they added. And here are the mod commands to do with it. So the first thing to understand is that with mounted things, everything is defined from the main rider, the primary rider. The rider is the thing you recruit. The rider is the thing that says, I have a mount, this is the mount. And they also say things about crew in other cases, which I'll get to in a moment. So the first thing is that you can define what the mount of the monster is. So let's say our rider is a Chaos Knight. The Chaos Knight is riding a Chaos Steed. He's got that as the ID. He's got unmounted images, which is just to say if he loses his steed, this is what he looks like. So it's basically the Chaos Knight is on foot now. He's no longer riding a Chaos Steed, so he looks like a dude on foot. He kind of looks like a Chaos Warrior. Pretty straightforward. You then define the mount separately, and you've got various different commands you can put against that. But something I wanted to cover is that you can have a variable number of mounts, and you can have a variable number of riders. You can't combine multiple riders and multiple mounts. So let's talk first about multiple mounts. So imagine a mage who is being carried on a palanquin. It's got two bearers holding it up, so it has two mounts. You are able to define that there are two mounts. You'll be able to define that the mount is the ID of whatever the bearer is, and then pretty straightforward. You've got two people who are carrying someone on a palanquin. If one of them is killed, the rider goes to the ground, the other one is freed and does whatever he's been set up to do. You know, if he's a horse, he might just run away. If he is some infantry, he'll just carry on fighting and so on. So you can have multiple different mounts, multiple different bearers. You can also have multiple riders. If you imagine the Chaos Mammoth or the Empire War Wagon, these are these big things where they've got multiple different crew on them, and the crew can all kind of do some fighting. Well, you can do that in Dominion 6. You can set the number of riders. If you have, so here's an example, an elephant rider, which is accompanied by two additional people, you would set the number of riders to 3, so it includes the primary rider. The primary rider is the one that sets all of this stuff up. You buy him and you get the mount and you get the extra crew. The crew are called co-riders, I believe here. Yep, co-riders. And this is where you can give them their ID. They all have to be the same thing, so you can't have a war wagon that has one guy with a crossbow, one guy with a morning star, one guy with a pike, and one guy with a halberd or something like that. You can't do that. But you can have the main rider, maybe he's the guy with the halberd, and then the other 3 guys all have crossbows or something like that. So you can set that up. You can also put sprites in that show when the co-rider is lost. And then you can do those multiple different times to represent fewer and fewer riders being left. So for your elephant rider, you've got a sprite showing all of the crew. Then when one of the crew dies, you've got a sprite showing just 2 crew on top of it. And then another one dies, you've got a sprite showing just 1 crew on top of it. And then finally you've got the mount sprite, which shows if all the crew are off it or dead. So you've just got the mount left. We've also got this very useful command here, regain mount, which is so that you can say that they automatically regain their mount, because normally they don't. If you lose your mount, they have to kind of trudge home, and then you have to buy them again at a discount, and you get the mount back. But you can use this command to just give them their mount back automatically after battle. This is useful for well, let's go back to our example of the mage being carried on a palanquin by 2 bearers. They just get 2 more bearers immediately after battle. You just give them regain mount 1, and they can get them straight back up again. Normally the commanders, so they're different from troops a bit, commanders that are mounted, they can get their mount back through a reclaim mount order. So they spend a turn, much like you would have an order to site search or whatever. There's an order to just reclaim your mount, you spend the turn doing that. But you can also have a command to stop them from doing that, and that's used for gods mainly that have divine mounts that have to be summoned back up by the priests. They have to call the mount of the god back. Oh, I've got one viewer here, Bruh69. Ah, yeah. Hey, man. It has been a long while. It's been a long while since I've made any videos. That's partly because I've been busy with other things, and partly because I've been busy on the beta team for Dominion 6 and not really able to talk about it very much until recently. Yeah, I've had a good year, and I hope everyone else is having a good year so far. But yeah, I had a nice holiday. So back to what I was looking at. The skilled rider ability. This is kind of a swingy one actually. So a skilled rider increases the defense value and the morale value of the mount that they're riding, but they can only do this. Rather, a value is subtracted from the skilled rider value, which is the encumbrance of the mount's armor. So if you've got a mount that's got like heavy plate barding, the fact that you're a really skilled rider will only increase its morale. The defense will not matter so much because for all of your skill, you can't make the horse move around that quickly when it's got all of its heavy barding on. So skilled rider is more important on lighter cavalry, but it is quite important on lighter cavalry. It's important generally to just give you more morale, and I'm going to be using that liberally in the Warhammer mod, obviously, for things that are really good riders, like some of the High Elves and Dark Elves, obviously, like Illyrian Reavers are really good skilled riders. The Wood Elf Glade Riders are really skilled. The Riders of Kislev are obviously very skilled, and the Marauder Horsemen are really skilled riders as well. So we've also got some nice abilities. This is just useful commands we've got for mounts. You can say that the mount is a commander. That is really rare in the base game. It's basically used on like the mount of a pretender. Like what's the mount of Odin called? Sleipnir, is it? His big 8-legged or 6-legged, whatever it is, horse. That's a commander. If you make the mount a commander, they can then have their own item slots and so on. And they can also persist after battle, even if the rider is knocked off them or killed or whatever, they can persist separately. It's not something that you would generally use outside of that situation. You generally, like, mounts are not really, they don't really make sense as commanders. I know people have been thinking, like, the age-old question of the Freak Lord, which one is the Freak and which one is the Lord? It's the guy in the back, the little humanoid. We can officially say that now. And the Freak is he's actually got regain mount 1, so he'll automatically get the Freak back if it dies. It's not the case that the Freak is is a commander or is the commander of the one on top is something else. People need to let go of that dream, I think, at the moment because it's not really a thing you do, making the mount a commander. You can say that the mount doesn't have any barding. This is useful on because basically if you're a commander, your mount will then have a barding slot and you can make magical barding and then put it on your mount, which is really cool. If you have some bearers, humanoids who are carrying your palanquin, obviously you don't want them to have. So yeah, say humans that carry a throne with an emperor in it. You don't want them to have barding slots. That's just not how they work. They've got their own weapons and armor and things. And then there's also a command for no throwing off. You would use this on mounts that are more important than the rider. Basically, the mount will not throw off its rider if it routs or gets paralyzed. So like an elephant, you don't want, when the elephant routs, it throws all of the crew off the back. It's really important, so the mount should run off with all of the crew, and that way it'll survive as a single unit and you won't have to re-recruit it or anything like that. So that's an important one. And then no full damage, which is basically for chariots. It's to say, if the rider falls off, if the mount is like fleeing or destroyed, the rider, when they come off it, doesn't take full damage, because if the chariot's just destroyed, well, basically the rider can just step off it, is the idea. That may not be very realistic. With a chariot, maybe you can't just get off it. If you want the ride to stop, you might in fact just get yeeted by the chariot being destroyed. So you can choose whether to use that or not as a modder. Crucially, you can, under the old system, you can still use this. So all of the old mods and things that just use the old mounted system, they don't yet have all of the sprites drawn maybe to use the new mounted system. They don't want to code up all that stuff. They can use the old mounted system, and it is still appropriate for certain things to just say this unit is mounted so it gets some bonuses. And it can still use lances and things in the same way that the things using the new mounted system are. So it's really cool that they've put in this backwards compatibility of having this mounted thing. And when I release the Warhammer mod for Dominion 6, I won't have implemented the entirety of the new mounted system for all the nations, not by a long shot, because it's so much work. So a bunch of stuff will still be using the old system, and it will slowly convert over time. There are a couple more mount commands. We've got Brave Mount and Smart Mount. So Brave Mount is how likely it is to keep fighting after it loses its rider. If you imagine a horse that is, it's not really a war horse. It's just going to ride off as soon as the rider's dead. Off it goes. If you imagine a juggernaut of corn, which is carrying, a chosen knight on its back, it's going to keep fighting. It's not going to leave just because the rider's dead. So that would have like 100 there in Brave Mount. And then the Smart Mount, which is how likely the mount is to try and make it home for the purposes of recruitment. And this is not a really common thing to use, but if you imagine the Knights of Avalon, you've got a smart rider riding a smart unicorn. If the rider is killed, the unicorn goes back and you get a half discount on buying another Knight of Avalon because you've got half of it, you've got the unicorn. So you can save some money there by getting that discount. So that's basically the mod commands for the new mounted system. Don't think there's anything further to say on that. So let's move on from monsters to blesses. Here we have bless modding. So when we said that Dominion 6 was going to have bless modding when this was revealed by beta testers to people, they got very excited, and it's reasonable to get excited about bless modding. And I think what we have here is exciting, but it's not full fat. It's not a full featured set of bless modding things by any means. Instead, what you've got is a very simple set of things. You can see we've got basic bless attributes. You can select a bless. You can change the name. You can change the path requirement for choosing the blessing. I believe you can have an optional secondary path requirement as well, and you can change that value, and you can change that for existing blesses. You can also add new blesses, I think, although since you can't change the effects, I don't think that would do anything. So this is really just selecting a bless and then changing the name. You can say how much is required, how many bless points it costs, any further path requirements. You can't add scale requirements or change those here, but you can mess around with the costs of blessing. And that is as far as bless modding goes. You can change the costs, you can change the requirements of blesses, you can change their names, but that's it. You can't change what they do, you can't change their scale requirements at the moment. Maybe that's something that will come later. Oh, you can clear the scale requirements, but you can't add any new ones. So if you really dislike the scale requirements on like poison weapons, I believe requires 1 point of death scale. A lot of people hate that, they really do, so they can just clear the scales on poison weapons. So it's nice for them to be able to do that. This is all really good stuff for the purposes of balance modding. This is really great. For the purposes of getting creative and adding new blesses and things, you can't do that at the moment. Maybe you'll be able to do that later. The only thing you can do in bless effects is you can just clear all the effects of a bless and get out of the game entirely. Just remove it. But there's nothing else in bless modding. So remember, there is bless modding. It is kind of exciting, but it's really just about balance. It's about how much things cost and what they require. So next thing to mention is, I think, going over to events and talking a bit about event modding and thrones. So let me talk about thrones first, actually. If I go over to the site rarity, so in site modding, you could define a site as a throne of ascension. The thing that the game is about, the way that you win the game, is getting thrones of ascension. But in Dominions 5, if you added in Thrones of Ascension, usually you would add them in by kind of events adding them into the game. They could be claimed, and then they could have certain effects. That was cool. But they would never add to your ascension points, so they didn't actually count as thrones for the purposes of like who's going to win the game or anything like that. In Dominion 6, the thrones that you add to the game through events or any other things like that, or through spells possibly, those thrones in modding will give you ascension points. So if you set one as a Throne of Ascension level 3, you will be able to put a Throne of Ascension in the game that someone, if they claim, can get 3 points. This is actually really important for messing around midway through a game with the way that the game is going to end. You can do quite a lot of cool stuff with this. So I think that's just a really cool thing they've added in. It was often requested, and it now does work that way, so that's really nice. So before I go on to events, I think I actually... Sorry about that, my headset just cut out there. Oh, we've got some more talk in the chat. Let's have a look. Kids in Videos called Dominion 6. Did the developer just drop a new game? I didn't realize it. Bro69, yes, Dominion 6 is coming out. It's going to be coming out next week, basically. I think it's the 17th it's slated for, which is a Wednesday. So it's going to be like Wednesday or Thursday. You'll be able to get Dominion 6. So yeah, it's coming out. Kidsin says, that's kind of lame about blast modding. Yep, I agree. We can still do some cool stuff with it. It's really nice to be able to balance things. But yeah, it's something. And it's quite possible, given that they have put that in, and given that they've got this section, bless effects, I think it's not unreasonable to think that Illwinter may add more kind of full-featured bless modding in. They certainly have, for their previous games, continued to add in mod commands and increase the number of tools and things we've got available. So, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that there might be some more stuff coming from bless modding. And as you were saying, the throne stuff could be interesting for some crucial sites of the Warhammer universe. I may be using some stuff in the Beastmen in particular, I think, as they're kind of trying to accelerate the end of the world, or the Chaos factions, may be able to do some cool stuff by just adding in thrones, by like they destroy an enemy capital, it turns into a throne, and then they get more ascension points by having destroyed it, or maybe it spawns back in their territory, I don't know, something like that. There's a few different things I could do with that. I haven't thought about it too much yet, because it was only just added into the beta. So going back, what was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, something that's like a really huge thing, and something that I'm really excited about for single-player gaming and for co-op gaming in this is AI templates. Apparently they're not called AI templates in the moment. Let's have a look. Alright, basic template creation, AI modding. Okay, these commands can be used to set pre-designed pretenders and specific research targets for AI players. That sentence alone already very exciting about what we're going to be able to do. Creating a valid pretender design using these commands only will be challenging, so there is an easy way to create them from within the game. Just design a pretender like normal, so you go to the pretender creation tool, you're making a pretender, and then you press Ctrl-Shift-S, and it saves a text file which contains the necessary commands. Now, as an experienced modder, of course, I will not be needing to use this shortcut, although it does actually save time. I'll probably just be typing the command straight in. But basically, the templates that you add into a mod, when you add them in for a specific nation and you say, here's a specific pretender, this is the specific scales that this pretender is going to have, and here are the specific bless effects it's going to have, and here is the magic that it's going to have. So it's all of the stuff that you would do in the pretender creation tool. You can do multiple templates for one nation, in which case it will be used at random, but a thing to remember is if there are any templates for an AI nation, then it will use one of them. So if you've only added one in, if you've, Middle Era Abyssia, if you've made a cool AI pretender god for them as a template, and you've loaded that mod up, and you make a new game, and it's got Middle Era Abyssia in it, they will take that one template every single time. It will always be identical. So we've got our template. It's got the chassis, the physical form, that's defined by monster name, and then it's also got an ID it can use to distinguish between them. It's a bit weird, but it works for distinguishing between stuff. And this can point to a custom pretender. It can point to a modded pretender, which means you can make a totally new pretender just for the purposes of the AI getting it as part of an AI template, which opens up a lot of cool stuff that modders can do. And believe me, they will be doing a lot of cool stuff with this for single players. You can say whether it's awake, dormant, or imprisoned. You can specify its magic paths and at what level. Its dominion strength, its scales, all of the stuff that you would be able to do in the creation tool, and you can do all of the blesses and bless names. A crucial point to point out here, while you could make this in the pretender creation tool, and there you would be limited by the number of points traditionally, because you'd be using up design points as you're adding these things. If you do this through mod commands, you can just do whatever you want. So if you want, you can say for Middle Era Abyssia, I want to have the Lord of the Forest, which is not a pretender they can normally have, but you can just specify that they can have it. It's fine. If it's in there, it doesn't matter if this is legal or not. You can say he's going to be awake. He's going to have 9 in every single magical path. He's going to have Dominion Strength 10. He's going to have all of his scales, perfect scales, all positive scales, but not only all positive scales, but scales that go beyond what they would normally be able to have, because you're limited to -2 to +2 normally. I mean, Abyssia can have a bit more heat. The Lord of the Forest can have a bit more growth, I believe, so you can go up to growth 3. But But when you're doing a template, you can just say, nah, I'm just going to have 5 growth. Nah, I'm just going to have 5 order. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be legal. So you can do some really wild pretender designs. And the same with blesses. You can just say what blesses you have. You don't have to go, I've got this many bless points and I've got these paths so I can have these blesses. No, no, no. You could take just 9 in water magic, water 9, and then you could say, well, he's going to have fire shield and he's going to have blood vengeance and he's going to have enchanted blood. They don't have to be legal blesses at all. So you can do some really wild designs with these. You can also, going beyond the basic stuff you can do in the pretender creation tool, you've got these 2 really useful fields. So the first is research goal. So you say research goal, this AI with this pretender, using this template, your job is to research this particular spell. So let's say Middle Era Abyssia, you really want them to get to Fireball as quickly as possible, which is an evocation, I forget what, 3? 4? I don't know. Anyway, let's say it's evocation 3. So you say Fireball, the AI will try its best. Whenever it does research, it'll put it into evocation until it's got to the right level to get Fireball. But you can set more than one research goal. You could say, first you do Fireball, and then I want you to go and get summoning big fire elementals, which is Conjuration 5. So, big fire elementals, that's your next research goal. So you know exactly it's going to go evocation up to 3, Conjuration up to 5. If you set a bunch of research goals all in a sequence, you can set exactly how the AI will research. You know exactly the path they will take researching everything, and you can do some pretty cool stuff with that. So you've got a lot of control over what the AI is going to research if you use these templates. Additionally, you've got the favrit or favorite ritual command, or favored ritual perhaps. It makes the AI prioritize casting this ritual or forging this particular magic item. So it works for both rituals and items, and this works for spells or items. So you can have it go up a construction tree as well. So you can use a lot of these commands to make it prioritize multiple things, and there is no particular ordering of these. It just prioritizes, whatever it can. If it has access to them via research and paths and gems and so on, it will attempt to do them. They'll be very heavily weighted. So let's go back to Middle Era Abyssia. You can say, I want you to do the ritual, summon Fire Drake. Probably not a good idea, but let's say that's what you want your particular AI to do. You want it to summon a lot of Fire Drakes. So you can tell it to summon Fire Drakes. And then you can use Dischool and Level to disable this favoriteness, this Fire Drake summoning behavior, as soon as it gets to a certain level in a certain spell school. When the AI reaches this level in this school, the command will be disabled. Which means you could say, early on in the game, Abyssia, I want you to research up to Conjuration 4. I want you to really, really hit Fire Drakes as much as possible, get tons of Fire Drakes. But I want you to stop making Fire Drakes as soon as you have researched up to, Enchantment 6 or something like that, where you're going to cast some other spell. Because then you'll be saying, no, now you've passed the technology level at which I want you to be messing around with Fire Drakes, so I want you to be doing other stuff. So you can basically set it up so you have control over what the AI is researching, and you have control over what the AI is heavily weighted to cast at any particular period of the game. So you can say, early on, get me Fire Drakes and forge, Fire Bowlers, Flame Brands, whatever. Research boosters would be a good thing, right? You can set it so that early on it's making research boosters and then it stops. Cut that out, go do other stuff, save up your fire gems so that you can get a fire global or something like that. You can see that by using these, you've got quite a bit of control over what the AI is going to do, and they make quite a big difference in my experience. Quick look back at the old chat. Kidson says, oh, sick, competent pretenders for the AI. Yes, it will be competent pretenders for the AI. So at the moment, we've not had that much time to mess around with these commands. I've known about them for a while, but other people are kind of just getting used to them, and they haven't really known because they haven't been documented until just recently. But you should see, after the launch of Dominion 6, a bunch of stuff which are like packs of AI template pretenders, and some of them will be like absolutely nails hard, like super, super, super powerful. So Brett69 says good AI will make or break a strategy game, especially for games as complex as Dominions. Yeah, I agree. This is going to result in some really big improvements to the AI and more fun in single player. Kidsin says this sounds like it could open a niche competition where people just mod AI nations to act and do certain things and just pit AIs against each other. I think that that's probably true. You could do that and you could simulate those games quite quickly. And if you've seen my video on CompTurn, you can run those games and actually watch what the AI is doing to learn how your mod commands are actually affecting it, which is really cool. I think it's kind of an interesting new area of modding, at least. Something we've been asking for an ability to do for a while. So I'm going to move on to event modding now, away from AI templates, but the first thing I'm going to show you in event modding is actually really, really important for the purposes of making a really good single player experience and doing cool stuff with the AI. So let's switch over to the event manual. So I'm going to go over to this command. Rec AI. This simple command, this one command here, is going to make an absolutely massive difference to people's ability to make interesting single player mods. And the reason is very simple. If you're a modder, you'll immediately see this. When you see this command, you'll be like, oh, this lets me do a bunch of stuff. But it really does. But I'll explain why. So Rec AI, this event can only occur for AI players or can not occur for AI players. So you've got it both ways around. So now, imagine this. You've got a mod which early on gives all of the AI players some additional troops to help them expand. By using some kind of event trickery, using a bunch of events and flag monsters and things, you can see whether the AI is doing okay in expansion or not. Basically, you can kind of check how many provinces it has for the most part, and if it's not doing well, you can give it more troops. And you can have these events only be triggering for the AI, which previously you would have to make a mod specific to say, if you're playing as Niflheim, use this mod which enhances all of the other AIs in the game but doesn't do anything to Niflheim. Well, now you can have a generic mod that just goes, if the AI is this, do this, and it can be, if the AI is this and it's this nation, do this. So you can tailor it to the specific nation. You can use event requirements to tailor it to the specific situation that the AI finds itself in. You can do a lot of stuff with this. You can also, by using flag monsters, have it so that a player, during a single player game, could have the option to trigger a bunch of things that will make all of the AIs in the game stronger in some way. So you could have this is getting kind of big into lots of events and chains and things, but you could have the player able to cast a spell that summons up a flag monster, a flag for just saying this game state is now true. So the spell could be like enhance the AI difficulty 1, or it could be like give all AIs some extra armies. And then that could trigger a bunch of events specifically targeted at the AIs that gives them those things. So you can actually get really complicated with this, and you can make a bunch of kind of like clever campaigny stuff for single player gaming. Now, it'll be interesting to see what people come up with. This is really new. I haven't done very much with it yet, but I plan to do some stuff with it. So yeah, this is actually really important. And then also, having events that only happen for players is kind of important too. The corollary. There's a bunch of stuff where you don't want the AI messing around with certain things, but you do want the player to have access to them, and you can use these events to only target players. So it's actually a really strong and powerful thing. It may not seem it if you're not a modder, but believe me, this is going to let people make some really complex and interesting stuff for single player. So Kidson says, I immediately thought of Endgame Crisis like in Stellaris or Total War Warhammer 3. Yeah, you can absolutely do those. You can do a bunch of stuff. And you can do, as I say, it can be stuff that the player chooses whether or not they trigger it. You can set up that more complex system of logic. Hello, Cantastropus. It does sound awesome. I agree. I'm really happy about these mod commands being added. We've been lobbying for like a whole bunch of mod commands. And I think with Illwinter, they're like an interesting mix of going, we really love modders and we want to give you all these cool tools. And so often we're going like, can we have this? And they'll just go like, yeah. And they'll add a bunch of it in and they'll add extra stuff that we hadn't thought of maybe. And then sometimes we'll say, can we have these things? And just nothing. no response, or they just don't want to add them for some reason. And you don't really always know why, but I'm actually really happy with a bunch of the mod commands they've got. I think that there's going to be a lot more added after release as well. They've been really supportive of modders, and I want to say that's a thing that Dominion's series is good at, and Ilwin's has really been good about being supportive of modders. So yeah, lots of good mod quality of life stuff and improving stuff where we've got nasty workarounds before. And then there was another thing that I had mentioned, which is a kind of a nasty workaround that modders have been doing a lot with. So this is one where this isn't really going to let us do new things, and by us I mean modders. We can already do what this command lets us do, but this is a much cleaner way of doing it. So I'm going to go and show you that now. Event variable requirements. These commands can be used to check a set of global variables called event variables that can be altered and checked by events. The event variables number from 1 to very high number and can contain any integer number. So each of them can have any integer number. There are a bunch of commands for setting these variables, and they're just event commands. So you can say like, what's a good example? So you know the way that Nurgle in the Warhammer mod has got some plagues that spawn, and I have a bunch of stuff in there which is basically like they're hidden monsters. They're monsters which are hidden in the background, and you can't detect them or anything like that, but it's kind of a janky way of doing it. These monsters are used as flags that certain things have happened. So like a plague has entered the world, or a plague is adjacent to the province that you're in, things like that. Instead of having those, I can now use a set of global variables. So I can have a global variable that I know in my notes stands for the number of provinces that have a plague. And then I could increment that variable every time a province gets that plague, or things like that. Or I could have one that's just, if it's 0, the plague does not exist. If it's 1, the plague exists in the world. So a bunch of really useful global variables. And then I can have events check them. So I can say, oh, okay, the event variable must have value of 1 or higher. Yeah. So does this plague exist in the world? Has this variable been set to 1? Checks it. Yes, it exists in the world. I don't have to use complicated stuff using flag monsters anymore. I can just use these global variables. Super, super useful. It must have a value of exactly 0, have exactly 1, -1 or lower. And there's a bunch more things that I want to have around variables, and I have asked for, we'll see if Ilwin adds them, for stuff like take the number from the global variable and then use it for something else. So you can say like, if the number is 20, there are 20 provinces that have been infected with the plague, then give me 20 of this. Or you could say, if it's more than this, then it kicks into the next level of how strong it is. You can do this stuff with event variables, but it would be nice, it'd be cleaner if we had a bunch more commands for messing around with them. That'd be really useful. But these are actually really strong, having these. I say strong, they're a way of doing things that we're already doing much more cleanly, and it's nicer for newer modders as well. It's not actually going to let us do anything new that I can think of. So it's stuff we can already do, but in a cleaner way that's less likely to have bugs and cause problems. So yeah, again, kind of quality of life stuff. Yep, so Kit's saying, great to simplify things and avoid the shenanigans. That's what a bunch of the commands are doing. It's really good. Yeah, and getting rid of those like extra messages and things is going to be really good. So I think the only other thing that I want to cover in this video is the workshop. So ideally, I would kind of show you the workshop working and how this works, but I'm just going to have to describe it because I'm not kind of showing in-game content at the moment. But I will start by saying, Dominion 6 supports mods on the workshop, which is really cool. It means more people are going to be using mods. It means that people will be able to more directly give feedback on mods, which will be really nice. People will be able to keep up with the updating of mods, and you'll be able to have dynamic updating. So you won't have to worry about going, oh, I need to check if there's a new version of this. Have I got the latest version of this? No. You just subscribe to Mod on the Workshop, and as long as you sign into Steam regularly, you'll download whatever the latest version is as soon as you're able to. So that's really good. Yeah, so if you subscribe to a workshop mod, it automatically updates if you have Steam on. And there is a thing built into the game. So the mods then get downloaded into a particular directory within Steam as workshop items. So they are separate from mods that you would have locally on your computer. And Dominions automatically tells the difference between those two things. They don't conflict with each other. So for instance, I work on the Somber Warhammer mod. I have a local copy of that. I can then upload that to the workshop. There's a very simple thing in game to do that. Basically, you just right click on it and say upload to workshop. Very simple. It sends it off to the workshop. If I subscribe to it, I then have a workshop item version of that mod that is downloaded, and the game makes it clear which is which when you're enabling mods, but you can see both of them. One of them is local, one of them is in the workshop, but it all works really straightforwardly. Mods are also able to contain multiple DM files. This is really important. It's something that I definitely lobbied for, and I was really happy that they put this in, because it means that you can have in your mod that you upload to the workshop, you can do a mod pack, so you can have several mods in a single workshop item, which is really nice. So you can have like a mod pack that's, I don't know, it combines no mercenaries, a mod that turns all the mercenaries off, with no indies, a mod that turns all the population types off, with what other thing would you want to just get rid of en masse? I guess you could have one that turns all the sites off if you were weird. You could have no sites. So you could have a mod pack that's like, remove this, remove that, remove this, and you get the whole lot in a single mod pack. And if there's any updates to any of them, they get updated automatically because you're subscribed to them. So that's really cool. The other nice thing about having multiple DM files in a single mod is that your mod can contain the most current version, and it can contain previous versions. And this is super, super, super important, because if people are running a multiplayer game of a particular mod, so let's say they're doing a multiplayer game of Somber Warhammer, right? I'm being a bit egotistical here and just talking about my own mod, but let's say that's the case. So people start a multiplayer game of Somber Warhammer. They're using version 1.0. They're playing the game. It's been a couple of weeks. I want to add a bunch of stuff. So let's say I've added some new heroes or something, right? But I've also had to kind of move the IDs around and like change some things. I want to release Somber Warhammer 1.1. Next version. If their multiplayer game, which is using 1.0, automatically updated and overwrote everything in 1.0 with 1.1, it could cause a bunch of bugs inside the game. It almost certainly would if I've been changing the IDs around, right? It could also impact the balance. Like I could be adding stuff to a nation and then they could be like, oh, halfway through I get a bunch of new stuff and no one else does. So, not a good situation. But, because I can include multiple DMs in the mod directory, the thing that people get from the workshop, then I can say, here is Somber Warhammer 1.1, and it also includes Somber Warhammer 1.0, and if their multiplayer game is using Somber Warhammer 1.0, there is no problem. They've got 1.1, but their game is not overwritten with it. They're still just using the previous version. It is static. It also means that you can have another version which you do want to be overwritten. So you can have a version that's just whatever the latest is. So if you're playing a single player game and you're less worried about bugs and things, and you just want to have whatever the latest version is, whenever there's an update, you want that new content to be directly into your single player game, you can just say, well, I'll use Somber Warhammer current version, whatever the current version is. I'm not using 1.0, I'm not using 1.1, I'm just using whatever the most current version is. And that can be updated as well. Every single time it's updated, the stuff just automatically goes into your single player game. It may cause bugs and things, but maybe you don't care. So, the fact that they've put that in steps around one of the biggest problems with mods, provided the mod makers actually do include the static versions, in that it doesn't screw up multiplayer games that are ongoing. So, that's really exciting. So, I think that's everything I wanted to say in this video. Oh, I've been talking already for 54 minutes. And I'm a bit out of breath. I was a bit unwell over the holidays, so my breath has not a great capacity. Is there anything else that I wanted to cover? Oh, I wanted to say that when Dominion's 6 launches, I think it's quite likely that the lobby that's built into it, because it's got a built-in multiplayer lobby, which is a really cool feature. It's really, really good. But on launch, that is not going to support mods. It will support mods later, Johan has said, but that lobby initially you won't be able to use modded games on there. So I think what I'm expecting is people are going to play a bunch of games without mods on the lobby. Some people will play games with mods using external tools or just server games. You can still use stuff outside the lobby, you just can't do it in the lobby. After a while that'll be updated and then people will be able to use mods in the lobby. And I think that won't take terribly long after the release of Dominion 6, but we'll see what Johan does. So yeah, I'm going to include a bunch of mods, including an example mod, Late Era Waka, which will be there to help other people make mods, so they can download that and take a look in the DM. It's very heavily commented. I'll be including a bunch of mods that do useful things for launch, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the launch. So hopefully I'll be able to do another video possibly before launch, showing off some of this stuff. But yeah, that's everything I want to cover. Let me take a quick look at chat and see what people are saying. So Kidson says workshop is a pretty damn big deal for modding. It's great that it's integrated. I agree. I've been kind of resistant previously about when people were like I think in Dominions 4, Dominions 5, people would be like, why doesn't this game have the workshop? I really want the workshop. And I was thinking, well, there are a bunch of drawbacks to the having workshop support. How's it going to work with multiplayer mods? How's it going to work with updating and things? But basically those problems seem to me to be solved now. So they have introduced the workshop in a way that they've done it carefully and they've done it sensibly, in my opinion. Couldn't have shipped without multiple DM files, exactly, yeah. It would limit the usability a lot. And then Kidson says he wonders how Clockwork will handle this. So Clockwork is an external tool for running games, mostly through Discord. My understanding from Dirithil, who's the guy who makes and maintains Clockwork, is that he will do something, but he's looking at kind of integration with the lobby and things like that. I imagine that there will be external tools for running server games outside of the lobby. Breast69, I don't have a single clue what you said or even understand what the file said, but I'm happy the modder is excited about this. That's the only takeaway I want people to have, really, is your single player experience of Dominions using mods, and those mods will be on the workshop, they will be coming, will be getting better. So single player gaming, better stuff. People who play multiplayer games and enjoy using mods, much easier access to mods. Much more modding is going to happen, in my opinion. There's going to be a real explosion of this stuff because of the workshop, and because the new commands and tools will be given, they'll be able to do more complex and interesting things. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really good time for very heavily modded games of Dominions as well, personally. All right, that is quite enough from me for now, I think. So I'm going to go, and yeah, I hope everyone had good holidays, and I'll speak soon. But yeah, excited for Dominion 6. See you soon.